Hello, everybody. My name is Blake Robison, and with me today I have Jim Wyatt, the Tennessee Sportswriter of the Year. Welcome, Jim.
Blake, good to see you.
All right, well, if you're ready, I'm ready to jump into some questions.
Okay, I'm ready.
So, first off, very easy. Just kind of walk me through your path, how you got started in sports media, and where how you got to where you are now.
Oh man, that's a long story, and certainly it took me a long time to get to where I am now. But I went to the University of Tennessee, and I've always liked sports. Always enjoyed writing. I changed my major three times when I was in college. I ended up as an English major, and it got to be I've got two kids now that have graduated, and they knew what they wanted to do kind of when they started college. I didn't really know it until the very end, and so I changed my major three times. My very last semester in school, I thought, hey, let me write for the school newspaper. I had the Daily Beacon was the name of the paper, and to be honest with you, I grew up a Vanderbilt fan. I started going to Vanderbilt football games when I was a kid. Vanderbilt was coming to town to play UT, and I thought, well, let me swing by the Daily Beacon, see if they could assign me a story. I happen to know a lot about Vandy, so they said, well, why don't you write about this Vanderbilt Tennessee game coming up, kind of with a Vandy angle. So I wrote that story, ended up writing another story, and then I graduated. So that was it. I had two stories in the college newspaper. That was my only experience coming out. I graduated in December. I started working a full-time job at a place called the Register of Deeds, which is where property mortgages and tax liens and property deeds are all recorded. Nothing to do at all with the newspaper business. But I was still intrigued by wanting to work for the newspaper. So I started working at night. I talked to the sports editor and who was there at the time, John Bibb. He said, "Hey, we can put him to work part time if he wants to work at night, answering the phones." And that's what I did. I started answering the phones down there. I was kind of one of the agate clerks, which is the guy people would call in hole in ones or bowling scores or high school track and field scores, and I would type them up, and they'd be in the paper the next day. They started letting me write a little bit more. And I kind of paid my dues. I covered high schools, I covered small sports, I covered sailboat races. And I think the more I did, the more they wanted to throw at me, and I was willing to do anything. So I worked two jobs for 6, 7 years. That place at the Register of Deeds, I did that 40 hours a week. I probably worked 25, 30 hours a week in the newspaper. Realized couldn't do this my whole life. I had to pick one or the other. And I finally had a chance to work at the Tennessean full time as the high school sports coordinator. I did that for 2 years. Got lucky that the Tennessee Titans moved to town. The Oilers were leaving Houston. And in 1999, my editor says, "Hey, how would you like to be a backup, one of the Titans writers? Backup covering the Titans, and then and maybe be a backup covering hockey, the Nashville Predators in town." So that was my big break, and I covered the Titans and Predators for 2 years. Uh, uh, One of the Titans writers wanted to move on to something else, so they asked me to be the beat writer, which is the guy who is primarily responsible for that beat. And I said, I'll do it. And that was my job from 1999 to 2015, covering the Titans for the Tennessean, the newspaper in town, the paper of record. In 2015, someone with the team said, "Hey, we'd love to hire you. We've got an opening. We're going to start covering this from inside the building. How interested are you?" And I never thought I'd leave the newspaper because I'm a newspaper guy at heart. I loved working for the newspaper. I love breaking stories. I loved being kind of an aggressive beat writer. But I think it was, with the way that the newspaper business was changing and with the opportunities, with the team side, I thought, let's give it a shot. So took the job in 2015 working for the team. And here we are, 2025. I'll be going into my 11th year covering the Titans for the team. And I guess that's 26 years total covering the Titans.
I mean, again, kind of the dream to kind of get to work internally with a team. But something you said kind of stuck out to me, kind of doing the dirty work early on. So many people I've talked to and so many stories you hear, they run the coffees, they get the copies, things like that. They sweep the floor, the dirty work, and you are no different. And I want to know if you could speak on what that teaches you and kind of how you appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I did do the dirty work and did a lot of stuff that nobody else wanted to do or would really want to do. And I mean, I'm telling you, there were I'd work 40 hours a week at the courthouse in Nashville, and then I would be at the newspaper, which is on Broadway in Nashville, right from downtown. It was probably 10 minutes down the road from where I worked at the courthouse. And I'd get there at 5 o'clock. And there were nights when I first started where I really would. I'd answer the phone from 5 o'clock till midnight and then get up and do the same thing the next day. And, uh, you know, it wasn't glamorous at all, but I watched other people who had already established themselves in their careers, whether it was David Clymer, who was a great columnist here, Joe Biddle, who used to work for the Nashville Banner, ended up working for the Tennessean, Chris Lowe, who's really made a name for himself with ESPN. Jeff Legwold, ESPN writer who used to work at the Denver Post, Mike Organ, a guy who's been at the Tennessean forever. I watched all those guys work and kind of learned from watching them. And then the more responsibility they gave me, I was able to kind of learn on the job. I talk to so many people now, people trying to get into the business who after graduating have already done all kinds of stuff, in college, worked for the school newspaper, editor their sports, their school newspaper. They've covered big events. I didn't have any of that. So I kind of had to learn as I went. And I still say the lessons I learned in covering high school sports and keeping your own stats and interviewing players and coaches and just all of that helped prepare me for this. And not trying to slight anybody, but all the time I have people that will email me or text me, "Hey, I'd love to work for the Titan." Like kids fresh out of college. "I'd love to have your job. How can I get your job?" And I would, it took me, 25 years to get here. I mean, a lot of it was about hard work. Not everybody has to do that. I took the long road to get here, but it certainly helped establish me when it was time to do what is a very hard job.
Yeah, there's a grind that a lot of people don't want to notice or just don't see yet. But I want to switch pages a little bit and ask you kind of about on the job. You've been a beat writer for them, and then now you've been with the team internally. So you've probably got to know the players pretty well. And I did a little investigating. I saw your Twitter, your profile. You have a picture with Eddie George, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
So is there a nice community building? Because a lot of these guys, maybe that are more national, don't get to be with the team every day and see these guys and see their inside lives. So what can you say about that?
Yeah, and it's crazy when I think about, those days. My first years covering the team were with Eddie George and Steve McNair and Javon Curse and Frank Wycheck and Bruce Matthews and Samari Roll and, Derek Mason and Blaine Bishop. I could go on and on. And that was my introduction. I went from covering high school sports to all of a sudden covering these guys who were Heisman Trophy winners and first, you know, top 10 picks in the NFL draft and then were Pro Bowlers and NFL stars. And so that was you kind of really get to know them. It's different working for the team as opposed to when I was working as a beat guy covering these guys because while you want to be friendly with them and you want to build relationships, you also got to do your job and there are some there are parts of the job that make things challenging, but you just try to be fair to these athletes because they're people too, and you want to always treat people with respect. And I've seen a lot of people come and go in this business who maybe will burn bridges. I think part of the reason I've been able to do it for 26 years is because I've always tried to at least treat people with respect. And now it's crazy. I see Eddie George around and his son played at Vanderbilt. I used to see him in the stands there. He's now moved on from Tennessee State to Bowling Green to be a head coach. I've seen Brad Hopkins, who played here, whose son, Bryce, Bryson played, now plays in the NFL himself. He just finished his career, but I've talked to Brad Hopkins, who was a starting offensive lineman on that Titans Super Bowl team in 1999, and then kind of full circle his young son Bryson. I saw Brad in the stands at the Super Bowl a couple years ago watching his son play for the Rams. So it's just crazy how many players now that I covered now have sons that are accomplishing great things either in college or in the NFL. So and you watch these guys, become fathers and community leaders, and makes me feel old. Certainly, Kevin Dyson, who is a star, who certainly is best known for his involvement in the Music City Miracle, and then on the final play of Super Bowl '99, he's now a doctor and very accomplished author. Has done a lot of great things in the community, but he's got gray hair, and he's certainly nowhere close to being near as old as I am. But I've seen these guys grow up, and it's hard to believe sometimes.
Yeah, it has to be cool. They're kind of like, part of your family. But again, with the journey, I have another question kind of about your progress. You've kind of been all over the place. Now you're more settled down. But throughout the journey, especially in the early days, were there moments that were kind of unexpected or things that kind of took you off guard and maybe for better or for worse that just surprised you?
Yeah, as far I don't know, I guess I would say it surprised me. I mean, I think just the evolution of the business and how much that has changed. I mean, nobody would have been able to tell me when I first started covering the NFL in '99 the job would be what it is now. Because back then I'm writing again for the newspaper. People pick it up and read it, and they would have deadlines where you'd have all the scores in the paper, and you're trying to beat the competition. We had the Nashville Tennessean is who I worked for. The Nashville Banner was another newspaper in town, and these were rival papers, and you tried to have something in that newspaper that the Banner didn't have. And if you got beat on that story, you'd have to wait a whole day to bring your readers up to speed. And now it's hard to find a newspaper, but the internet changed things, where everything, again, I used to spend my whole day trying to do interviews, write stories, have it in by a deadline, and then you wake up and do it all over again the next day. Now you get news or you find out something, you got to put it on you got to put it out there immediately, or it's going to be old news. And it's not just the internet, but obviously Twitter came along, and I think I got my account in 2009. There's so much immediacy there. You again, you've got to, if you want to have a reputation or you want to be somebody who's considered a newsbreaker, someone who's in the know, you've got to have an audience on Twitter, and you've got to break news. There's obviously you got to do podcasts. There's blogs. There's so many different factors. I mean, I've got Instagram now, and again, Twitter and Blue Sky and Instagram and Facebook and Threads. And again, I'm on podcast all the time. It's just a completely different business, and it's just however everybody wants to consume it differently. And I think I've had to evolve uh, as someone covering the team because of just how much has changed over the years.
Do you like it? I mean, of course, you got to see both sides. Somebody like me, I've basically only known the internet and social media. Do you like this new world of podcasting and blogging and posting on social media?
Yeah, I do. I'd be lying if I didn't miss the newspaper days. I've got a father who's 87 years old that, again, used to wake up and read the newspaper every morning, and and it was fun to be able to break news and then have your competitor have to deal with that for 24 hours before they uh, could get to it. So and that's what I grew up in. I missed that to some degree, but I love the way it is now. And it's again, this is a job to me, but I love sports myself. So when I'm not covering the Titans, I'm keeping up with the Los Angeles Dodgers, my favorite baseball team, and to be able to see all the stuff that the people that cover that team do on social media and listen to their podcast. And I mentioned a Vanderbilt fan. You can find so much more on social media. Um, you know, I do like it, and I love the opportunities it gives people because sadly the newspaper business is kind of dying. They just papers are shutting down, deadlines are early, people are getting laid off. So now you at least have more opportunities to kind of get in and create your own niche.
Well, if it weren't for the social media era, we wouldn't be here today talking. So,
Yep.
yeah, it's very interesting. But okay, I want to throw a fun question at you though. So, are you ready?
Okay, let's do it.
All right. So, if you could cover any sporting event, like it all, at any venue, past or present, it doesn't have to still be standing. Do you have a dream combination in mind?
Oh man, that's a great question. Because I have been fortunate. Football, obviously, my first love, uh, and I've covered 26 Super Bowls, and that's kind of the pinnacle for me. I, I mentioned I love the Dodgers. I have been to Dodger Stadium in that press box before, met Vin Scully there, and so I have done that. Those would be two of the top ones, and I've been lucky enough to do it. Um, I guess the Master and the Masters. Yeah, I've never been to the Masters. I love watching the Masters, but I don't think I want to go there and cover it. Like I would want to go there and watch it. So. I think I've worked a lot, and so I'd be my goal or my dream would be to go to something like that and be able to leave my phone at the gate and just be able to enjoy the day.
Well, I'll tell you, of all the people I've been able to interview and talk to, the Masters is by far the number one answer, and it's because of the atmosphere. There's just something about it so peaceful and kind of legendary. So great answer from what I've come to learn.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's so if anybody's watching this knows how to give me a free pass one year down there, I'm all in. My
Uh,
wife's the golfer in our family, though. My wife played golf at Ole Miss, and she won the state in high school. So if I was going, I'd have to take her. I couldn't go down there by myself. She wants to go more than I do.
that's awesome. I'm not a golfer, but I mean, if somebody gave me a trip to Augusta, a free ticket, I'd go.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So with your career, have you had any role models? Is there somebody that you looked up to maybe when you were younger, or maybe even now?
My dad obviously my biggest role model. Just growing, he was a criminal court judge in Nashville, and always treated people so fairly and with such great respect. So I mean, he's obviously my number one role model. My mother, too, who I lost a couple of years ago. Certainly they're the ones that kind of taught me how to treat people and how to work hard and always to kind of stay grounded. Um, so they're clearly at the top of my list. Now, as far as and I mentioned some of the other people earlier when I was just getting started. I think they're the ones, the David Climbers, and I didn't mention Larry Woody then, but the David Climbers and the Larry Woodies and the Joe Biddles, uh, the Jeff Legwold, the Chris Lowe's, the Mike Organs. Um, I think watching them, I learned so much because again, I didn't have a lot of experience coming in to the business, and I don't know that I could have ever predicted that I'd be doing this interview um, after covering the NFL, from 20 going on 26 years. I've been lucky and I'm doing it in my hometown. So I think I owe a lot to those people from me just watching them. I had great sports editors, mentioned a couple of them, but then, guys like Mike Jones and Bob McClellan, a couple of hardcore assistant sports editors who push me. I mean, they're the ones who kind of deserve a lot of credit for me having the work ethic that I have now. But so I think those would be the ones that stand out most to me.
I love how it always takes a little army for everybody to have success. It's really cool that it's not just a one man thing. It's a whole kind of community that gets involved and promotes the success.
Yeah, because it's, but the last thing you want to do is come in and try to act like you know it all, or you don't need any help, because I needed help certainly. Like, and I was very raw and very didn't have any, again, experience, and made mistakes along the way, but people kind of looked after me, and I appreciate that. Like, I loved the NFL when I was a kid growing up, but never dreamed I'd be covering the NFL. So when I went from covering high schools all of a sudden being covering the NFL, um, I had to kind of, same with hockey too. Like, I didn't know a lot about hockey, and there were people that kind of showed me the way, and taught, showed me the ropes. I ought to mention, got a couple of other guys, Paul Kuharski and John Glennon and David Beauclair. Those were some of the people who were also beat guys on those beats when I came in, and they they taught me a lot. So it definitely, you definitely got to lean on others who have kind of done it before you.
I want to turn the tables on you. So now you get to give some advice. I know you've already done a little bit, tidbits here and there throughout the interview, but if you were speaking to a young professional, maybe like myself, who has interest in getting into the sports media field, what would you tell them?
I think get as much experience as you possibly can, and because it's competitive out there now. I mean, I see some of these resumes and see what people have done by the time they graduated from college, and it's impressive. So the more you can do, the better off you are, whether that's writing or whether that's podcast or blogs or being active on social media. And then treat people with respect, be fair to them. Again, you can make a splash by trying to make somebody look bad or burning somebody on a story, but you're not, if you want to stick around for a long time, you've got to be able to build a reputation by being somebody that's going to be fair and going to be honest, and treat people well. So that's the main thing, is don't lose sight of that. I mean, don't try to uh, pretend to be a know-it-all, or be somebody who won't take constructive criticism or advice. I mean, everybody can learn. I'm still learning after doing all these years. I still have to adapt and know there are things that I can do better, things I wish I could do better, and you always kind of have to have that growth mindset.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've heard. You're always growing. If, there was a question I asked some people, it's like, when did you realize you made it? And they're like, well, never. I've never made it. I'm still always, getting better, because the day that I'm content with my work is the day that I need to quit. So I think it's really interesting to see that parallel within what you said. But real quick, I'm going to hand the microphone to you, Jim. If you want to say anything, the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, Blake, I appreciate you giving me the floor here to kind of talk a little bit about my career. It's amazing. It's really, I feel very blessed again to have been able to do what I'm doing as long as I have. I wouldn't do it if I didn't still love it. There's some things that are a lot different working for the team compared to not working for the team in the newspaper, but I've always tried to find, um, you know, the positives in what I'm doing now. And um, I don't know how long I'm going to work. I talk to my wife all the time. Again, I've been doing this for a long time, and and I look around the press box some of these days, and hard to believe I'm one of the older ones in there now, with all these young people coming in the business. So I still love what I'm doing, and that's the key. I mean, is find a job that you love, and 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 you will feel blessed, and that's kind of the way I feel being able to be a sports writer. I mean, that's when I was a kid. Um, I used to listen to basketball games on the radio, and I'd write little stories off of the games and give them to my dad when he got home from the games. And to think now that turn that into a career is hard for me to believe. So I'm just thankful that I'm in the position I'm in to be able to talk about winning a Sports Writer of the Year award. I know a lot of people probably deserve it more than I do, but I'm not going to turn it down.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jim. Once again, congratulations to Jim Wyatt, the Tennessee Sports Writer of the Year. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Blake, I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.